it seems like time is really stretching. So when I entered the international development department, there was no Spotify.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure when Facebook and the newsfeed came out.
Yeah, it's 2006, 2007.
Yeah,
maybe.
so there was still no newsfeed.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did when I arrived in the department, I did other things before the department. I arrived, I think, 3-4 years after. I was like 23.
Yeah.
Was sending FedEx and UPS to various markets to hope that they would listen to CD.
Yeah.
Because there was no Dropbox or Google Drive or. So
it sounds like it was like the early 19th century.
Yeah, that's why like time really kind of stretched or dwarfed. I don't know how, which way.
Yeah.
Depends what end of the spectrum you're on. And so that's what I learned. Not learned how to do, but that's the field that was in front of me. And then you had to call people and ask them like, did you listen to the record that I said? Oh, which one? You know, this one and then they would say, oh, hold on, and then they would put in the record player because there was still hi-fi system.
Wow.
And I was 23, and already at the time there was a couple of initiative for. So I think the first iPod was out, Napster was definitely there. People didn't use social networks, but email was there.
But like things like Big Champagne.
It was 2009.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. Was that later?
That's like 4 years after, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Big Champagne, I think they launched in 2009 and they sold in 2010.
Yeah.
When Next Big Sound and Music Metrics launched, and then they sold in 2014.
Yeah.
And then we exist since 2014 in beta.
Yeah.
But before that, it was bad. So it was like the crisis, blah blah blah. And so really, my boss, who was 59 at the time, had 30 years of old school stuff, and I was 23, and I was supposed to do the new stuff.
Yeah.
So also, it's a Cinderella, it's merit, but it's also I just happened to arrive at the right time or the right time
when you could learn everything from this.
So.
It was actually the wrong time.
It was, I
wanted to get into the recording industry at that time, and everyone was like, "No, terrible."
Yeah,
it's the wrong time, but in some ways.
My boss, when I was an intern, told me, "You're doing a horrible choice for your career.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you as an intern, but you should really refuse." He was really a funny guy, inspiring guy. And so, I arrived at the wrong time or the right time, where people needed to find a new balance.
Yeah.
And I was also lucky in the right time that because my boss, I could have arrived with my boss was like 35 and I was 23 and he would have been hands-on.
Yeah.
He was 57 when I arrived. And for the 3 years that I worked as a project manager, I knew he was going to go to retirement. So I'm not sure if it gave me an extra boost to let's not have another boss in front of me. And also another thing, and you never know if you're part of the success or you just happen to be there.
Yeah.
But the Belgium artist signed in France, Stromae.
Stromae.
He signed with Universal in 2009. And in 2010, which was the last year of my boss, I happened to be the one working at Arondance. And so it was the one track that went like crazy. It was the first YouTuber before YouTube, like YouTubers existed, because it was 2009. He was doing the lessons online, but like nobody really did that.
Yeah.
So we had to track YouTube metrics. It was a French guy with a very small, French signee, Belgium guy with French signee, with a very small international development team. We're not like Interscope, who had to all of a sudden track 20 markets, and iTunes was exploding.
Yeah.
So I was trying to see how many countries the track was number one simultaneously to announce hey, we're number one in 15. Let's get more. You have to animate. My job at Universal was to be a kind of the coach of a lot of different people in different markets to have them work the same project. So you have to be try to give them arguments and positiveness and
get them enthusiastic.
Give them the storytelling when they go to media. That's what they can talk about. So every day, every week, you hope that you have something new that you can say that's the new thing. Whatever he told you yesterday, no for. Call him back with something new. And so we couldn't do that at Universal. There was no tracking system, which is what I was saying at the talk, because iTunes was kind of new. Maybe the US were so dominant that they don't really care. They were selling a lot of stuff. And for us, it was like the first time, like Daft Punk, Air, Justice, they were all with Virgin at the time, or Headbanger, which is part of Because. So Universal was not a great export machine, or international. Universal France was not a good international machine for young artists. It was good for like Nana Mouskouri, Serge Gainsbourg, Jacques Brel, like more classic artists that you, heritage artists, I think they called it, that you would export in like more adult stuff. But all the young music was not coming from France at Universal. So the department was pretty small. It was my boss at the time, his assistant, who was also a project manager, but who was more like an also assistant, me, and then my intern, who was really like an intern, and I had to every 6 months switch. So all of a sudden we had like a hot single in 20 countries, and I had at night to check the thing. So honestly, it was a horrible, frustrating.
Because you're doing everything manual,
everything, and put it in an Excel sheet, and then having to try to go graph to see where it was going and see which market was stagnating. So I could. It was a really crazy, great experience, because honestly, having a big success like that, when you're hands-on at 23, 24, it's cool, but it was very stressful, because as soon as somebody asks you a question, you never know the answer, because it's too big for you.
And so it's moving so fast.
So it's like, how many did we sell? And like every day you kind of improve, but there's no real dashboard to have your real-time sell.
And people didn't really trust the numbers either, right? Did they
Well, the only way to get them was to call the German guy and say, how many did we sell this week? And then he would tell you, and he would say, okay, and he put it in the Excel doc. Or send an email to 30 people, and they would each individually respond, and you would have 30 emails, and then you would have to like kind of add, and I would do that every week. So, but it's and travel with the artist, do the promo campaign.
But he was getting lots of YouTube views around the world, and was that metric like considered important? Were people? Because this is kind of iTunes was dominant.
No, but that's the thing. It was really one of the first European artists where we had the argument to say, even to iTunes, you have to put it on the storefront, because the buzz is big. But it was not just we have airplay. We have YouTube people, we have comments. It was the beginning of some social networks. Actually, he definitely. I don't actually even remember posting the lessons on Facebook, but I'm sure we did, because Facebook already existed. But social networking was small. It was really just about reacting to people logging in on YouTube and having to comment. I think he had a MySpace at the time.
Yeah, that would have been right at the end of MySpace.
Yeah, it was one of those weird periods when one was dying and the other wasn't really big yet.
Yeah, that's why it's so difficult, right? Because people are leaving MySpace and you're trying to find where they're going.
And so anyway, I got there at the wrong time, which was I think the right time for somebody like me. I happen to have a couple of passions, and one of them is web development and coding, and actually not really coding that well, but just being curious about tech in general and geeky. And so I used to open my computers when I was 13, 14, trying to plug my Nintendo 64 to my computer and have like a outside graphics card that wouldn't fit my PCI board. And so I like geeky stuff. And so honestly, long story short, my boss left. I ran the department for a few years. We got some other successes. There was still no tool, or there was a bit of tool, but not really. I left. I started to manage bands independently, and it just became more and more of an issue. And I'm lucky that I had a good job and I was able to put money on the side. And I keep saying I was lucky because life is like that. But one of the friend of the first artist I managed, I met him at a night with my artist. And he just happened to be a developer. He was 18 years old, very passionate about coding. And I explained him my issue. And I said, you see, like your friend, I manage him. We just released an EP. It's like charting a bit on electronic stores on iTunes. And like, I'm not going to do 40 stores myself manually. So we should just track it. And at the time, iTunes was just, I think, an RSS feed. Each market has an RSS feed. So it was very easy to just tap into the database, tap into the RSS feed, log it, put it in the database, and make it searchable. And so we started with something very simple, which is to track iTunes charts. And I sent it to some friends, and then the thing kind of took over. And and I called back to my friend developer, and I said, I think we have something, like people seem to like what we do. Let's try to get another source, and then another source, and another source.
So once you started getting other sources, let me just check this to make sure it's on.